You're listening to the Middle East Radio Forum on 960 The Patriot. To join in the conversation, call anytime at 602-508-0960. That's 602-508-0960. Outside of the Valley, call toll-free 888-960-9696. Questions are also welcome at radioforum@aol.com. That's radioforum@aol.com.
Now your host for the Middle East Radio Forum, Meir Jolovitz.
Hi, welcome back. Thank you for joining us. Israeli elections are scheduled for the 1st of November. It'll be the 5th elections since April 2019. And since then, no stable government coalition has been formed, including the left-leaning Naftali Bennett Yair Lapid government. Well, it lasted a year. So elections are being held again. There's one party that has captured everyone's attention and is seen as the possible kingmaker, the power broker, in forming the next government coalition. That party is religious Zionism, which is actually the merger of two smaller parties, Otzma Yehudit with Itamar Ben Gvir as its head, and religious Zionists with Bezalel Smotrich as its leader. All polls in Israel have consistently projected that the religious Zionist party will get 11 or 12 seats in the next Knesset elections. Optimists believe perhaps even more. Now, everyone who follows Israeli politics understands that Benjamin Netanyahu can only put together a successful coalition if he includes the religious Zionist party. That, of course, gives them leverage to demand legislation and policies that are strongly nationalist, pro-Israel. I'm going to cite a poll a little later. The shift in Israel, decidedly strengthening the right. What was the effect of the growth of the party in the aftermath of the Arab riots in Israel, Israeli towns, while Hamas rockets rained down on Israel? It's a question that we need to address because that is part of the reason why Itamar Ben Gvir has become quite popular in Israel. Speaking to that is a guest that we've had before, Dr. Melissa Jane Kronfeld. She's a journalist, a former university lecturer focused on foreign policy, national security, Israel, and American politics as well. She's been a featured speaker at conferences around the world, including the United Nations, the White House, Capitol Hill, on a variety of television, print, radio, podcasts. She's a tremendous asset for our thinking. Dr. Kronfeld is the founder of Passion for a Purpose, a social impact consulting agency with offices in New York and Tel Aviv. Dr. Kronfeld, Melissa, it's a pleasure to once again have you on.
Thank you for having me.
I'm going to begin with a question because we've got commercial breaks that dictate the flow and the rhythm. Why have you aligned yourself? Why are you now associated with Otzma Yehudit?
Well, before I start, I just want to recognize that today is 9/11, and having lived through that day and living in Washington, D.C., it dramatically changed my life and set me on the course that I actually am on today, and made me study Islamic radicalization. I was a sophomore at George Washington University, and although I was already in the international relations program, that shifted my focus as I was really there on the ground when the books were being written and the research was being done. And I, of course, my heart goes out to everyone who lost loved ones, friends, and family members. And I mentioned 9/11 because it's an important segue into why Otzma Yehudit is important and why Itamar Ben Gvir is the leader for our day and age. Islamic radicalization was a quote-unquote new thing to America at the time of 9/11, but it's something that we have always confronted here in Israel since the founding of the state and beyond. And, for what leads us out of the depths of this evil, this atrocious evil that is Islamic radicalization and terrorism, is strong leadership. It's people who are willing to stand up to the enemies, to people who are fearless. People are confident, who believe in the power of their nation, in their beliefs, in their own faith, and are willing to take a stand when no one else is. And President Bush certainly proves himself worthy at many times during the fight, despite all his foibles. And right now, Itamar Ben Gvir is more worthy than any leader there is to lead us into the future of Israel, and not just because he'll stand up against our enemies in the Arab world and our enemies, unfortunately, here within Israel, but he takes a strong stance on issues that are most critical for today's day and age, whether it is Jerusalem as our undivided capital, whether it is our right to the Temple Mount, whether it is fighting for the rights of the religious and the ultra-Orthodox who are frequently sidelined in this country, whether it's standing up against police corruption, holding the country accountable, creating governance, law and order, and most importantly, he's the only candidate out there that is standing for the two fundamental values that the state of Israel was founded on, and that is our religion and our Zionism. And that is why it is so astute that the alliance that he is in is the Religious Zionist Alliance, because he is the leader that we need now, because he embodies those two principles to his very, very core.
Absolutely true. During the last number of years, Israel is very much politically like the United States. The left and the liberal left media opposes any political figure who represents a strong patriotic or nationalist policy. Certainly the case in Israel. The more the citizens of Israel have come to appreciate and support Itamar Ben Gvir, the more the left, the press, the media attempt to vilify him. And it backfires, it seems, because the people are tired of the same political establishment that's failed them for generations. Itamar Ben Gvir speaks to the same Israeli in the street that's been ignored for so long. Can you speak to that, please?
Absolutely. As my father used to say to me, you only fight back when you're afraid of things. You only act this way when you're really afraid of things. And they're afraid of Itamar because he exposes them, the left. He exposes the left for what they are, which is weak. It's just that simple. They are weak. They are so weak that they were willing to form a coalition across a group of parties and people who couldn't stand each other, and include a group of terrorists in their government. He is the only person that stands for the true values of this country, and the media's response to him, especially the Times of Israel and the Jerusalem Post, has been completely revolting. They fear him because they know how powerful he is, and how powerful he is growing. This is really, at the end of the day, it kind of boils down, and with all my love for Netanyahu and everything he's done for this country, Bibi chose to hold on to power, not choose a successor, not to breed the next generation of great leadership, which he could have done, and we could have had a range of amazing leaders. And because Bibi failed to help us, foster the next generation of great leadership, the people of Israel rose up and said, this is the leader that we want. In lieu of having the political system naturally weed out the good from the bad, the people now, have had to stand up and do that. And we all talk about, the 5 elections and it's an unstable government. Well, that is all true, but this has all been part and parcel of the process of finding the leader that we need. No one would have thought 5 elections ago or 4 elections ago now that Itamar Ben Gvir would be on the very top of the political spectrum, but he is, and that's only a testament to what he stands for. But I'd like to note to your audience, it's a testament to the person that he is. I'm extremely fortunate to not only work alongside him in a professional capacity, but I consider him a friend, a brother. I've spent time in this man's house on Shabbat. I've worked alongside of him in the office from 6 a.m. to 2 a.m., and I know him as a human being first, before I know him as a politician. And I can tell your listening audience and everyone around the world that he is exactly the person that he says he is. He is true to his values. He will fight for us until he cannot fight anymore. And there is absolutely nothing that can stop him. He's tireless. He's committed. He's passionate. And he's caring. He's a kind, loving human being. As I said, I spent time at his house in Shabbat, and, I wasn't really sure what to expect because I'd only seen him go, Knesset, lecture, seminar, protest on the road. And then the second, the clock struck sunset, this man became the quintessential father and husband, and there was nothing in the world more important to him than the next 25 hours that we got to spend at home with his family.
We have a commercial break that's coming up. I concur, by the way. I first met Itamar, in fact, quite a number of years ago when he was a teenager. And he had that zest and that zeal and that love of Israel then, and certainly more now. Commercial break. If you've been injured on the job, contact Robert Wisniewski and Javier Grajeda at the law offices of Robert Wisniewski. Mr. Wisniewski and Mr. Grajeda are certified by the State Bar of Arizona as specialists in the field of workers' compensation law. Both outstanding professionals dedicated to securing justice for the injured worker. Mr. Wisniewski and Mr. Grajeda can be reached by phone at 602-234-3700 or at azhurtonthejob.com.
Watermark Wealth Strategies and Watermark Wealth Planning offices at 11333 North Scottsdale Road, Suite 295 in Scottsdale. Has been a loyal sponsor of this program since its start. They specialize in wealth retention, estate, and legacy planning. Watermark has been a leader in the Valley, and its members have been together for over 17 years. Founding partner Carmen Cercone has over 36 years of experience in tax, investment, and estate planning issues affecting retirees and their assets. They offer comprehensive planning that has helped assist families through the process of identifying client objectives and concerns and constructing a strategic plan to address tax, risk, and legacy issues. Consultations are complimentary, and we encourage you to contact Allison Porter at 480-442-3989 to schedule. Securities offered through Kestra Investment Services, LLC, member FINRA/SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Kestra Advisory Services, LLC, an affiliate of Kestra Investment Services. Watermark Wealth Strategies, LLC, is not affiliated with Kestra Investment Services or Kestra Advisory Services.
Gilligan's on Maryland, on the northwest corner of 7th Street in Maryland, is much more than just a great Shell station and mini-mart. Great cook-to-order food, different flavors of coffee and tea, beer and fine wine, including kosher wine, round out a wonderful one-stop shopping experience. A loyal sponsor of Middle East Radio Forum. Check them out on the northwest corner of 7th Street in Maryland in Phoenix. That's Gilligan's on Maryland. Phone number 602-277-6269.
Veggie Village, the best vegan restaurant in Arizona, has a second location. Still at 1255 East Northern, now also at 15577 North Hayden Road, Suite C103 in Scottsdale. Chicken, beef, calamari, shrimp, and more, all made out of plants, all a delight to their taste buds. You just have to try it for yourself. Not open on Sunday on Northern, but open 7 days in Scottsdale. Give them a try and you will be back for more. I am William Wolf, creator of Middle East Radio Forum and an injury attorney in practice since 1971. I was awarded the high honor of Trial Attorney of the Year by the Arizona Trial Lawyers Association. I only advertise on the show where you can get to know me and my values. My office is at 7301 North 16th Street, Suite 203 in Phoenix. Please give me a call if you have need for an injury attorney at 602-279-1914.
You're listening to the Middle East Radio Forum on 960 The Patriot. To join in the conversation, call anytime at 602-508-0960. That's 602-508-0960. Outside of the Valley, call toll-free 888-960-9696. Questions are also welcome at radioforum@aol.com. That's radioforum@aol.com.
Now your host for the Middle East Radio Forum, Meir Jolovitz.
Hi, welcome back. This, unfortunately, is the shortest segment before we go to the next commercial, so let me get this in. I'm sure that I'm going to get my share of emails or text messages from people, listeners, friends, colleagues, who will tell me that it sounds like I'm using the radio broadcast as a sounding board for Itamar Ben Gvir and the Religious Zionist Party in the coming elections on November 1st. That is correct. It's exactly what I'm doing because I love Israel and because I care about its future. I want to make a comment about a poll that was just recently published in Israel about the political proclivities of Jewish voters as they move rightward in Israel. In a recent survey, which gauged the political proclivities of Israeli Jewish population, there was a discernible shift in political attitudes. And it compared and contrasted voter identification between April 2019 and August of this year. Those who identified as right-wing increased from 46% to 62%. Those identified as political center dropped 9 points, from 33% to 24%. And those identifying as left-leaning declined from 17 to 11%. That is good news. And who's there to take advantage and perhaps even responsible for some of the increase in those who identify, and the nomenclature is right-wing. We're talking about good Israeli patriots, nationalists. Itamar Ben Gvir is exactly that. With us is Melissa Jane Kronfeld, Dr. Melissa Jane Kronfeld, a political consultant, advisor, a lady who knows it all. Can you speak to that shift toward the right, Melissa?
Yeah, absolutely. And I apologize, you cut out there for a second, but I think you said you'd like me to speak to
Yes.
what you just said. And, it's funny, the quote is, if you're not a Democrat by, 18, you have no heart. If you're not a conservative by 30, you have no brain. Mm-hmm. And I think that can kind of apply to Israel, too. This is a very young country. We're under 100 years old. And we're going through our political maturation. This country was founded in the left party. It held power for whatever, and it wasn't until Menachem Begin came along that power shifted, and that was only in the 70s. So we're really reaching our political maturation. But it's also important to note that Israel is typically, by the standards of other nations, a center-right country. Our left here, even though it does exist, it's not like the left in other countries. Even the left would be considered probably more to the right in other countries based on our necessity for extreme security measures, based on our constant state of war, based on our need to survive as the Jewish people. So that also should be taken into account when we're talking about this shift. But I think most importantly, the reason why the right has really risen in the past few years is because finally, and it is Itamar Ben Gvir, finally someone has articulated the values of the right. We grew very used to having Likud be equivalent to the right. And for a long time, Bibi was in power, and that was a lot of stability, but it wasn't an articulation of a real ideology of conservatism, of rightism, and what that means to be a nationalist. And over time, Likud became I hate to use the word, but Likud became what politics is. And now somebody has come along, Itamar Ben Gvir has come along and reminded us, as I said before, the fundamental values upon which this nation was built, which is our religion, our Jewish faith. That is not deniable. The left can say what they want. We are first and foremost a Jewish country. You can never take that characteristic away. And secondly, it is Zionism. For all my friends who say that Zionism is a lost cause, we need to move past Zionism. We have to find a post-Zionist era. Zionism has achieved its goals. No, it is not. Zionism is an ongoing, living, breathing concept, ideology, tangible notion of Jewish existence in its homeland. And if you take away Zionism and you say, we need to move past Zionism, then what you're saying, we need to move past the Jews in a Jewish homeland. And that opens the door to all different kinds of things and changing the fundamental character of this nation. This world is filled with amazing people and amazing countries and lots of land and lots of different political ideologies and beliefs. But at the end of the day, there is a tiny little strip on the coast in the Middle East that is smaller than the size of New Jersey, that Hashem said to the Jewish people, y'all can live here and reside here, and this is where you can be. And when we forget that, then we forget what it means to be Jews in a religious sense, and we forget what it means to have a Jewish state in the Zionist sense. And Itamar Ben Gvir is the only person out there clearly and plainly articulating religious Zionist values, and those two things combined result in a nationalism, which is not a bad thing. It's not an evil thing. Maybe it was when someone like Hitler is at the realm, right? But nationalism means pride and confidence in your country. It means standing up against your enemies. It means believing that the power that you have as a nation that has been built and thrives in today's society not only deserves its place in the world system, but deserves to stay in that world system and not be threatened and not be told what to do by allied nations, and be able to fundamentally determine its own course of history and affairs and its national character. And Itamar stands for those things. And it is because
Melissa,
of Itamar that I believe that the Jewish state is going to be stronger after November.
I must interrupt you, which is unfortunate, but we do have a commercial. I do want to say, as we break the commercials, both Israel and Ben Gvir are fortunate to have someone as passionate and as smart as you are as a proponent. He's lucky, Israel's lucky, and we're lucky to have you today. Commercial break. When we come back, the longest segment.
I am William Wolf, creator of Middle East Radio Forum and an injury attorney in practice since 1971. I was awarded the high honor of Trial Attorney of the Year by the Arizona Trial Lawyers Association. I only advertise on the show where you can get to know me and my values. My office is at 7301 North 16th Street, Suite 203 in Phoenix. Please give me a call if you have need for an injury attorney at 602-279-1914.
Gilligan's on Maryland, on the northwest corner of 7th Street in Maryland, is much more than just a great Shell station and mini-mart. Great cook-to-order food, different flavors of coffee and tea, beer and fine wine, including kosher wine, round out a wonderful one-stop shopping experience. A loyal sponsor of Middle East Radio Forum. Check them out in the northwest corner of 7th Street in Maryland in Phoenix. That's Gilligan's on Maryland. Phone number 602-277-6269.
Cherry Blossom Noodle Cafe has terrific sushi, salads, rice and noodle dishes, soup, and even great pasta. On the northwest corner of 10th Street and Camelback, it will become your favorite Asian restaurant. A loyal sponsor of Middle East Radio Forum for more than 10 years, it is simply the best place for a great Asian lunch or dinner. That's Cherry Blossom Noodle Cafe on the northwest corner of 10th Street and Camelback. Tell them that William Wolf sent you there. Telephone 602-248-9090. Texas Grill on the northeast corner of Bethany Home Road and 16th Street has been my favorite steakhouse for 31 years. Great food, especially their chicken fried steak, as well as daily specials in a comfortable setting, keeps me coming back for more. You just have to try it for yourself. Also a great Sunday brunch starting at 10 in the morning. That's Texas Grill on the northeast corner of Bethany Home Road and 16th Street. Give them a try and you will have a new favorite steakhouse too. If you need heart surgery, do you choose your surgeon from an ad on TV or a billboard? Of course not. Choosing your accident attorney also should not be done so casually and without thought. I am William Wolf, creator of Middle East Radio Forum and an injury attorney in practice since 1971. I was awarded the high honor of Trial Attorney of the Year by the Arizona Trial Lawyers Association. I only advertise on this show where you can get to know me and my values. My office is at 7301 North 16th Street, Suite 203 in Phoenix. Please give me a call if you have need for an injury attorney at 602-279-1914. No charge for our first meeting, and I take all claims on a contingent fee basis. Call 602-279-1914. That's 602-279-1914. I look forward to meeting you and working to achieve the best possible results for your injury claim.
You're listening to the Middle East Radio Forum on 960 The Patriot. To join in the conversation, call anytime at 602-508-0960. That's 602-508-0960. Outside of the Valley, call toll-free 888-960-9696. Questions are also welcome at radioforum@aol.com. That's radioforum@aol.com.
Now your host for the Middle East Radio Forum, Meir Jolovitz.
Hi, welcome back. Joining us today, again, Dr. Melissa Jane Kronfeld from Jerusalem, speaking about the coming Israeli election on November 1st. A number of weeks ago, and thankfully this is the longest segment, so much to be said. A couple of weeks ago, I did the broadcast here, and I titled that particular broadcast, "Let's Stop Expecting Justice or Logic When It Comes to Israel and the Middle East. The Facts Simply Don't Seem to Matter." Now, that seems to apply to Israel as well, unfortunately. Some in the media in Israel are boycotting Itamar Ben Gvir because he has become so popular. And yet others can't get enough of him because he's quite bold and brazen. Melissa, could I ask you to speak? I follow Israeli politicians left and right, good and bad. Sadly, they're more bad. And I saw the rousing reception that Ben Gvir has gotten not only in the high schools when he goes and speaks there, but in the streets, in the shuk and everything else. He has become quite a populist of sorts. And it's because I think he is, as I just said, bold and brazen. Could you talk to that, please?
Well, I think it really goes back to everything I've been talking about tonight, is that, the failure of Likud and Bibi Netanyahu to pick a successor and or help breed the next generation of great leadership in Israel has led to a situation where in any strong democracy, which we are, that people will stand up and determine their leadership if the political parties and our political system won't. We are very fortunate among all our peers here in the Middle East to have an electoral system that works. You learn when you study international relations that the fundamental characteristic of democracy is the transfer of power from one government to another. And we're fortunate to have that despite our instability. But the reason why I've had this instability is because there's not been a leader that has been substantial enough to lead us. And, we have decided as a people that Itamar is that man. I have traveled around the country with Itamar. I have gone out both in a professional capacity and a personal capacity, out to dinner maybe with the kids or his wife, and it doesn't matter where we go. It is impossible to not stop every 2 or 3 inches, forget feet, inches, and I'll have somebody beg for a picture. I shouldn't say beg, but ask for a picture and give him a hug. And unlike other politicians, Itamar doesn't care if it takes 6 hours to get from the podium to his car. He will stop and talk to every single person. I have seen personally his Shabbat agents, have a very difficult job protecting him because, he goes this way, he goes that way, he zigzags, he's hugging. But a person who is that fundamentally real, that appeals to people. There's all these people say all these kinds of crazy things about him, but when you meet him, he's extraordinary. He's got a heart of gold. He's got a smile that is infectious. And you can tell the second that you meet him that he is not anything like what other people say he is. He is as open a book as anyone you'll ever meet. He's a fantastic listener. He's incredibly intelligent. There's really nothing that you can say about his intelligence. It's really beyond. And his legal career prior to his political career proves that. But I think when you talk about populist, he's a populist person. I don't think he's a populist. I think he's popular, And I think that popularity stems from the fact that he has allowed the people to get to know him, every single one of them, whether it's walking in the shuk or walking down the beach or sitting at a restaurant. Itamar is always ready to be there for someone else.
Allow me
There's never
I'm sorry. Allow me to talk about someone who has come to know him and has and has joined the fight. It's a story that might not have gone noticed in America unless one follows closely Israel, but it's quite telling and it's important. I'd like to bring it up. It was found in yesterday's newspaper and again today. There is a new face that's joined the efforts of the religious Zionism and Otzma Yehudit list. That person is Brigadier General Tzvika Fogel, Tatalu Tzvika Fogel, once in charge of Southern Command, a serious military operative, just a wonderful man who all of a sudden has decided, having spent time with Itamar Ben Gvir, who identifies with the ideology. There was an interview that was done in Arutz Sheva, Israel National News, in which he articulates why, in fact, he decided, and it surprised some people, that a person of such great reputation, military, would all of a sudden join religious Zionism and Otzma Yehudit. And he will be, in fact, on the list. He's going to be number 10 on the list, which, if the polls are correct, in this particular case, he will be sitting in the next Knesset. I just want to read you, Melissa, please, 2 sentences. I'll separate them. Comments that he made. This is Brigadier General Tzvika Fogel. He said, throughout my years as a defense analyst, I watched as things I considered to be important were consistently not addressed. I realized that I could not guarantee that the country that my children would inherit would be better than the country that I myself grew up in. It was then that I told my family that I had to do something about this, and the way to do it was via politics. And what did he do? He joined the efforts that you're fighting for, that Itamar Ben Gvir, who, by the way, is an attorney, I'm not sure if that was mentioned today, a wonderful attorney, So Fogel concludes by saying, it was an easy decision to make to join the party. I believe that this is where I will have the greatest ability to influence the future of the Jewish people far more than any other party. My goal is to work for the benefit of a Jewish, democratic, nationalist, Zionist country. And he wants, of course, to see sovereignty imposed. I think this is a big thing because it shows that Itamar Ben Gvir and the party that he represents is being heard and is moving places. Could you comment?
Absolutely, and I did say that he was an attorney, and just to tell your listening, no, if I'm saying this, because I think it's probably why it popped into your brain, but to tell your listening audience, he not only was an incredible attorney, but they wouldn't allow him to take the bar exam because he had been an activist in his youth, and he fought and won to get bar exam to become an attorney. He even fought to become an attorney after finishing law school, and then he went on to defend the people that nobody else wanted to defend, the quote-unquote extremist settlers that are causing all the problems, who were simply defending their land against Arab violence, and he stood up for each and every single one. He took on the toughest cases, and he won every time. But to return to your original question, I think what your listening audience really needs to know about the Brigadier General is that, as you mentioned, he was in charge of Southern Command. And the South is the most neglected region of Israel. I think it's 80 to 90% of our population centers and our cities and our urban areas are, up in the north. It's about, if you look at Israel, you think about it as a long line, and Tel Aviv upwards. A little bit of course, Ashdod and Ashkelon is important, but the South is completely neglected because there's not a lot of people there. And what your listening on may not know is that the Negev region, which is in the South, represents 80% of our habitable lands in Israel. So if the diaspora is going to come here, if we're going to have an influx of people from around the world, if our population rates, our birth rates are growing, which they are for the first year ever last year, they actually surpassed the Arabs in large measure due to the increasing Orthodox community here in Israel, then not everyone's going to be able to live in Tel Aviv or Ashdod or up north. We're going to have to start making the South a priority. And someone who spent their career defending the South understands that. The South is also extremely important to Itamar. He lives down in Hebron, so he sees for himself how difficult the situation can be there. And if your listening audience can imagine, the South is where Gaza is where large parts of the Jordan Valley are. It's where the border with Egypt is. And every single day when you live in this country, you see 1, 2, 3 articles about smuggling attempts. And I don't just mean drugs, I mean guns, bombs, weapons. In the South, we have a massive problem with the Bedouin population, which is, its population is doubling in size every 10 years. And the lawlessness down there is extraordinary. For those of you who may remember earlier this year, a Bedouin extremist shot and killed, I believe, 5 or 6 people in Beersheba at a gas station before he was stopped by an Israeli with a gun who then had his gun taken away and was basically arrested for shooting the bad guy. The South is the future of Israel. Ben Gurion said, the Negev is the future, and I'm not a huge Ben Gurion fan, but I'll agree with him on that. The South is the future of Israel. That's where we're going to have to build. That's where we're going to have industry. That's where all the people are going to have to go. And Itamar being down there understands that better than anybody, whether it's dealing with the borders, basically have the porous borders that we have, or the growing Arab instability in this country, the increasing issues with Gaza. That may sound boring to your audience, but Gaza hasn't gone anywhere. It's still a problem for us. The South is, for the Brigadier General, obviously an extremely important issue. And someone like Itamar Ben Gvir focuses attention on it. That is how I first actually began working with Itamar. He asked me if I could help him develop a policy and a platform for dealing with the issues of Bedouin and Arab lawlessness in the southern region. And so, both myself and the Brigadier General are acutely aware of how problematic that is and how neglected it has gone. Nobody in government is doing anything about it. There are, it may sound shocking to your listening audience, but there are daily infiltrations on IDF bases in the South. Could you imagine a world where where a terrorist would infiltrate a U.S. Army base? Now, yes, it has happened, and it has been shocking to our conscience. Maybe, I think, twice for 2 incidences in America. But this happens all the time. And the soldiers on bases are restrained by use of force policies. So somebody is breaking into the base to steal guns from the IDF, and there's not much they can do about it. There are soldiers who have reported deciding that they would rather get in trouble for being AWOL than to go to base because they don't want their car to be stolen by the Bedouins or to have to shoot an Arab infiltrating the base and then go to prison for killing somebody who was committing a crime.
Allow me to throw in one more sentence. I see the clock ticks. We've only got a couple of minutes left. But I think this speaks to the this union now of Tzvika Fogel with Itamar Ben Gvir. In this interview, and I'm going to extract a sentence which I think says it all. He said, in responding to a question, if we do not succeed in this struggle, we'll lose our hold of the state of Israel. We've been talking about sovereignty for years, but unfortunately, no one has done anything about it. And obviously, he's joined with the forces of Itamar Ben Gvir and the people who support him for that very reason. We have another 2 minutes with you before I have to sign off and announce next week's show. Those next 2 minutes are yours. Tell us why you're so passionate about what you do.
Well, I'm passionate about the state of Israel. And like the Brigadier General, I believe that we are fundamentally on the cusp of losing the state if we don't stand up for ourselves. We were chosen by Hashem to have this land. We were selected to be a light among the nations. And we have proven ourselves to be leaders in the world, whether that's tech, medicine, science, culture. It doesn't really matter what you're talking about. We have a very unique and special place in this world. And we're giving it away. Each and every single day, our political system is just giving it away. They're giving away land. They're giving away our rights. They are absolutely and fundamentally undermining the national strength of this country. And Itamar has stood up and said, no more. That's it. This is our country. This is our land. We don't have to seize power at the expense of others, but we can be powerful for the Jewish people. And I think that resonates with a lot of the older people who have lived through some of the really tough times in Israel, for a lot of the younger people that are coming up and are unsure why so many of their peers are rejecting IDF service, and certainly Olim or immigrants from the diaspora like myself who gave up everything, a comfortable, cushy life on the Upper East Side of Manhattan to come here because I believed in my heart it was the right thing to do. And Itamar is the leader that makes me believe that it was the right decision.
Wonderful. I do believe, by the way, November 1st is actually sort of right around the corner. Tragically, it was another politician in Israel who once said that if a terrorist attack would ever happen, God forbid, before any national election, all of a sudden you see the right wing come in stronger than ever before. Mm-hmm. Sadly, in Israel, once that happens, a few weeks later, people forget. Anyhow, Melissa Jane Kronfeld, doctor, it was a pleasure to have you. And there's no question that I'll be speaking to you again after the election, perhaps, in which we will celebrate the fact that some common sense had been preserved and the people of Israel understood that, that this is the 11th hour. We've got to do some good things. And Itamar Ben Gvir is one of the people who's going to do those good things. Melissa, thank you so much for joining us. Much appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and to all your Israeli listeners, vote Ben Gvir. And for all of you in the diaspora family in Israel, tell them to vote Ben Gvir. He is the future of Israel, and he will lead us to stronger, better, brighter, more stable days.
Do what the American Democrats do. Vote for Ben Gvir 2 or 3 times. Anyhow, thank you so much, Melissa.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.